Most online courses follow a rigid sequence. Students read text, watch lectures, and move straight down the line until they hit a massive exam. These exams function as blocked assessments. They are fragmented events occurring infrequently and completely isolated from the context of the daily learning activities. This linear, checklist-style structure breaks the student's psychological state of flow. Moving abruptly from passive reading to high-stakes testing causes immediate disengagement. Course designers often fall into the trap of functional fixedness, treating these tests strictly as terminal evaluation mechanisms rather than integrated opportunities to learn. Placing a giant stop sign at the end of a module guarantees high attrition and misinterprets the mechanics of digital education. To fix this, assessment and feedback must operate as a continuous, invisible dialogue embedded directly into the course material. This diagram outlines an integrated framework for the online learning experience. The outer ring demonstrates how content interactions, learning activities, social interactions, and assessments wrap around the student seamlessly as an interconnected cycle. The center anchors on the learner, targeting 4 distinct dimensions: cognitive, emotional, social, and behavioral. Applying this specific architecture provides a structural blueprint to rebuild online courses from the inside out, maintaining learner momentum from start to finish. Breaking functional fixedness requires stepping away from an instructor-centric design and building explicitly for those 4 central dimensions of the learner. Cognitively, assessments should force learners to reorganize structural knowledge. An activity like concept mapping requires the student to actively connect and position new ideas into their existing memory, rather than just reciting facts. Emotionally, the course should trigger productive friction or delight. Virtual team projects, for example, induce feelings of anxiety, challenge, and eventual accomplishment, forcing students to navigate complex dynamics. Socially and behaviorally, asynchronous discussions can utilize structured role assignments to force direct collaboration and build group trust over time. These dimensions must be actively engaged during the evaluation phase itself, rather than limiting engagement solely to the reading or lecture material. By targeting these 4 areas simultaneously, the active testing stops feeling like a mechanical evaluation and becomes a deeply engaging problem-solving task. On the outer ring of the framework, the goal is to weave these evaluations so tightly into the material that the friction of taking a test disappears entirely. Through spacing and interleaving, designers break up a solid block of content, embedding distinct micro-assessments between topics. Alternating topics makes initial learning harder, but forces learners to continuously retrieve past information, permanently positioning new knowledge into long-term memory. These micro-assessments operate as stealth evaluations. They are invisible, low-stakes tasks that gather data on student progress without disrupting their engagement. One effective execution is the scenario-based activity. Instead of answering multiple-choice questions, learners navigate interactive, story-like narratives and make choices at critical decision points to demonstrate application. Another execution is problem-based learning. Presenting ill-structured, complex problems forces students to apply course principles to navigate heavy cognitive loads. A third method is content gamification, which uses structural progression and immediate rewards, like achievements or continuous challenges, to motivate action through the course. When evaluations are spaced out and stealthy, test anxiety evaporates. The student remains in a continuous, unbroken state of flow. To sustain that flow, instructor feedback must shift from a terminal grading mechanism to an ongoing dialogue, a mirror reflecting performance. This graph represents the illusion of competence. Learners often have miscalibrated perspectives, leading to a massive gap between high confidence and actual lower competence. Immediate, targeted feedback closes this gap, pushing actual competence upward and calibrating metacognition to match reality. Relying strictly on text-based feedback limits this calibration. Text struggles to convey empathy, nuance, or tone, often leaving the student isolated. Rich media changes this dynamic. Voice notes and screencasting drastically improve a student's retention of the critique by increasing the perceived presence and care of the instructor. Framing is equally critical. Feedback directed at the student's process encourages a growth mindset, while feedback directed solely at the final product triggers defensiveness. Well-calibrated, empathetic critique changes a student's perception of their own potential. Mistakes stop being failures and turn into fuel for momentum. The ultimate goal of this framework is learner agency, shifting the student from a passive consumer of information to an active constructor of knowledge. This requires iterative self-assessment. The first loop forces learners to immediately evaluate their own missteps and emotional confusion the exact moment they complete a challenging task. The second loop occurs upon receiving instructor feedback. The student submits a reflection outlining exactly how they will tune their mental schemas and correct their errors moving forward. Instructors can accelerate this ownership using pedagogical wrappers. These are explicit messages attached to assignments that reveal the specific reasoning behind the assessment's design, actively shifting the student's mindset from grade-seeking to skill-building. Designers can go further through participatory design, actively involving students in building learning contracts, generating rubrics, or writing the assessment questions themselves. True self-regulation occurs only when the learner takes total ownership of the evaluation process, completing the design of the system. Returning to this diagram, we see a complete departure from the rigid pipeline of traditional courses, replacing it with an integrated, rotating engine of continuous learning. This unified system corrects competence illusions and actively sustains student motivation throughout their journey. Digital technologies are merely the tools used to execute this holistic model. The actual innovation lies in handing agency back to the student. In the optimal digital learning environment, this integration is so seamless that the learner should never tell where content ends and assessment begins.